Welcome to another Coaching Wisdom podcast with Frank Iovine with us today. He's a public speaker, motivational speaker, professional speaker. You can check out his website at frankiespeaker.com. He's also a business owner at Meals and Memories with Nono. He's also been a ski instructor for quite a while. I think he still is, and has worked in the police force for quite a while. So, Frankie, glad to have you on. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about your businesses?
Sure. So I thank you for letting me come on and share my story with you, Charles. I really do appreciate it. You do your podcast goes a long way. So I have since retiring from the New York City Police Department, I've had a couple of businesses that I was involved with, but the two that I'm involved with now, which are my mainstay, I would say, is my speaking business, where I speak it's a motivational, but more of a mindfulness talks that I give on Stoic philosophy, which I know we can get into, and we can go down that rabbit hole. We can go down it later, but right now it's to talk about the similarities between our ancestors and what we have today, and then also a program which I have developed, which is called the 80-20 program, which I'll get into with you. And then the other thing, which is a cookbook, because I'm very passionate about cooking and also sharing what I've learned about cooking with other people. I think it's very, very important that people have a better grasp that everybody thinks that it's too much work to eat, vegetarian, vegan, eat healthy, and they end up taking that short road to processed foods, which then actually doesn't help the body at all. It doesn't help you burn anything, where we can truly eat better just by a few little things and a few steps, which is what I cover in my cookbook, because the cookbook is based on my grandfather's diet, who lived to be 101. And he ate a very traditional Southern Italian Mediterranean. And people call it a Mediterranean diet, but in reality, it's a Mediterranean lifestyle. It's where you shop, you eat fresh, you prepare your foods. Even if you have to prepare them a couple of days in advance, they'll still be tasty and be able to create memories and still have a lot of fun with them. So those are the things that I'm involved with right now. And let's go where do you want to go from here, my friend?
Well, I want to start with your background in the NYPD. So, how did you use the Stoic philosophy back then to get yourself under control and manage the situations which you had control over?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to have to answer that in a very unique way. When I was in the police department, I didn't realize I was practicing a lot of Stoic philosophy. It wasn't until after I retired and I got divorced, and then I saw my life starting to spiral out of control, that did Stoic philosophy come upon me. But what I did realize when I wrote my cookbook, that my grandfather, who he didn't know anything about Stoicism, but because of his Italian roots, he lived a very Stoic life. And as you know, Charles, there's three components to Stoic philosophy, or there's three areas. One of them involves, well, they're what they call logic, ethics, and physics. Now, they're not the ones that we know. They're ones that have different. And the way they compare is this, is one is your relationship with nature, which my grandfather had a very, very good relationship with nature. He grew a lot of his own vegetables. He was very, very kind. He understood. He had, what you call a green thumb. Anything he could bring anything back to life. So then his relationship with other people. And that's another part of Stoic philosophy, your relationship with other people and how you define that and how you look at that. And then one of the most important ones is your relationship with yourself. And that most people don't realize that we actually do have a relationship with ourselves. with ourselves. And until we start to look at what it truly is that drives us and motivates us, we can't start that very nurturing relationship with ourselves.
And what are situations precisely that you were put in during NYPD, generally speaking, that required you to keep your stuff together and find a quick solution, and that you could credit a cold and composed philosophy of yours, that you could credit that philosophy of yours that solved that problem?
So the idea that we are not in control, the idea that we're only in control of our responses and how we respond to people, was something that was ingrained in me. I didn't start to fully understand and develop more until after I left, but during it, one of the key things where that was a focal point was in situations of dealing with an aggressive person, in situations with dealing with somebody that might have just lost their son or their daughter or their loved one. The ability to understand that I am not in control of them. What I am in control of is how I respond to them. And am I responding to them in a compassionate way? And that was something which, when dealing with law enforcement, is not an easy thing to do, because you always have to be, you never know what's coming down the pipe. You don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to happen. So it's very, very important to be able to have that idea of what am I in control of when you're doing a interview scenario, when you're interviewing with somebody. What am I in control of? Well, I'm in control of my response and how I respond to that person. Now, that saved me a lot of headaches down the road, because I was able to build a rapport with either the perpetrator and or the complainants in a way that they could understand that I was just trying to find information out. That it's a key thing in all areas of life. And what comes from that is the section of being able to look at things intellectually and not emotional. As soon as emotion jumps in, you're done. You're on your way. You're going to go from 0 to 120 in about one fraction of 1 second, as soon as emotions come into play. And the easiest way to keep your emotions out of it is by understanding what you're in control of. That saved my ass a lot in the PD. And then now I have developed it even more to understand where it truly comes from and how it truly works.
So when is a good time to use emotions as a weapon of accomplishment? Because is it like a thing you turn on in some situation and in most situation you turn off?
Well, so the Stoics are very, very detailed in this. A lot of people believe that Stoic philosophy is about being stern, or not the lack of feeling emotion. And that's not really the truth. What the Stoics really believed in, to the best of my knowledge, that the research that I've done, is that they only appreciated positive emotions. So joy would be one of them. So say you have a child or a loved one that accomplishes something, you can feel the joy with them. That is a very positive emotion. What the Stoics wanted their followers or their practitioners to stay away from is the negative emotions: anger, resentment, greed. Those are the ones that are, close us off to the world, where joy is a giving, and the other ones, they're what's mine? like that.
And anger, isn't it something that can be turned for positive action? Sometimes I find that anger helps me boost my productivity or helps me speak about something. It helps me open a door that normally I wouldn't open. It would help me motivate, open that door. And once I open it, then I shift that into curiosity. For example, the current events of Israel and Hamas. The first thought that went through my mind is, isn't it these aren't these two factions going at one another because of emotions? You killed one of mine, I'm gonna kill one of yours. And the second thing is, these terror acts, they bring anger in me at first. So then I'm like, okay, I need to open that door. And once I open that door, I shut it. I don't continue the anger. I just like shift my mindset into curiosity. So on my side, I do believe in the power of anger. Even greed can be good sometimes. Not forever greed, but like if you're like, oh, I want this thing, and if it can motivate to shift my habits into a higher being, I can become better. I can understand that this Lamborghini is not going to make me happy in the end, and I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to give out to better causes. So can't we use those emotions sometimes as short-term fuel to open doors?
So, you know what? I do have something that speaks to that. So give me 1 second. It's going to take me a second to find. So there's a quote by Marcus Aurelius, and this is the quote, and I think this speaks to a lot of what you're talking about. So, a noble man compares and estimates himself by an idea which is higher than himself, and a mean man by one lower than himself. The one produces aspiration, the other produces ambition, which is the way a vulgar man aspires. So, what do we take away from that? What we take away is that when you look at things through negative counterpoints, anger, unless of course you're using it as a self-tutorial for yourself to understand, I'm angry, how can I get out of this anger, right? Or I know I need to earn more money to pay bills, so I am going to be a little bit more frugal, or pick up another job, or do another podcast, however that would work. But the main takeaway with that is part of what you would consider, keeping up with the Joneses. Well, I'm angry at that guy because he's got a Lamborghini, or I'm pissed off at that guy because of X, Y, and Z, or I'm pissed off at that lady because of X, Y, and Z. Yes, you will get in front of them, but you will get in front of them for the wrong reasons. So when you get in front of somebody for the wrong reasons, what it does is it'll counter affect your reputation or your character. You'll end up moving up your reputation instead of doing things for the right reasons. And when you do things for the wrong reasons, sooner or later, it will have a counterproductive effect on you. Whether you might feel guilty because, let's just say, you cut somebody's legs out from, when you're going for a job interview. You could be using gossip. You could be using things to shoot somebody down. And then a little bit later, that's going to come up in your subconscious or in your conscious, where it's going to produce some negative emotions for yourself.
Right. Good point. I think, it's first knowing your emotions and then using them as tools. I think that's what the Homo Deus would do indeed, and use these tools and frameworks as technology to its accomplishment. I have one other question since we're short on time here. You often talk about PTSD and traumas in NYPD and police force and fire departments, these and emergency responders. You know, it's one of the toughest jobs out there. And these we talk a lot about PTSD in the military in the US, but I don't think we give enough attention to these jobs, which practically speaking, they get way more trauma per day or per time. Although it's hard to quantify it, but daily there's very stressful situations, you know, and tough decisions need to be made, decisions that affect people's lives. And you've taken a lot of these decisions over your career that spanned more than 20 years. How did you deal with all of that, and how do you help other police department veterans or emergency responder veterans get through PTSD?
Well, the one thing is I'm involved in PAPA, which is a suicide peer support program, where if members of law enforcement of the NYPD are feeling suicidal, either active or retired, we will then go out and try and get them the services that they need so that they can better function in society. Because PTSD, if it's taken care of, it can actually be a strength because you knew you got past something. So there's a movie that I was involved with, which is a very, very amazing movie. And I'm trying to, of course, I didn't. It is called Residual: The Cumulative Trauma and PTSD in First Responders. This is a movie that it's a documentary, and it talks about what happens and now we're talking about all emergency responders. We're talking about police department, fire department, EMS. We're talking about triage nurses. We're talking about anybody that responds to a traumatic incident will end up having some type of PTSD. Now, with PTSD doesn't come in and affect the person as soon as it happens. It can be 5-10 years down the road that it can actually come and hit a person or take over a person's thinking. That's why a lot of members of our military services get out, or finish their military with flying colors with no problems, and then 6-7 years later, they end up in a very, very difficult place. So what I'll do is I will give you all the links, and you can put all the links in the chat below for your listeners.
Well, Frank, thank you for coming on today. Where can people find out more about you?
So they can go to frankiespeaker.com. You can reach out to me there, or you can go to mealsandmemorieswithnono.com. And then on November 11th, I will be participating in the Superhuman event, which is an event of all different mindset people, psychology, which will be aired where people can come in and understand what's going on. I think we have 23 different people speaking about different aspects of our thoughts and our minds. Now, there is one other thing I want to mention real quick. I developed a program called the 80-20 program, or the 80-20 equation. What that goes to is this. There was a study done. We have 80%, we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts. 80% of those thoughts are negative. Now, the negativity and those thoughts are anything from, I need to do that, I need to clean my car, that guy's a jerk. But we have 20% of positive thoughts. And what my program does is it helps you identify your negative thoughts, and then find a positive behavior to overcome those negative thoughts. That's
Thank you
something
so
else.
much.
You're welcome.
And I do recommend your book. So I believe, yeah, that it's called Cooking with Nona, right?
Yeah, Meals and Memories with No.
I highly recommend it. I read it and it was a beautiful book with colorful imagery and stories. So thank you so much, Frank, for that. That was another Coaching Wisdom podcast.